welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 62. I'm your host, Sabasa J. Wade, and with me is my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today, our episode is going to be about signaling. So, signals in draft, how to read them, how to send them, and basically all of our thoughts on signaling in draft. But before we cover that, how was your week, Yuki?
Well, I've still been very busy with painting, so not too many very exciting updates. I will be done tomorrow, I think. We got pretty close today, but then we just realized it was like we might have been able to finish, but we'd be working really, really late. So it might be like a half day tomorrow or something, or certainly done by the end of the day. So that'll be a big relief. But yeah, that's been mostly what I've been doing. We don't have any more local RTNs going on, but there is one coming up next weekend if we're willing to drive to Seattle, is it?
Yeah, it should be at Seattle at Zulu Games.
Yeah, like 2.5, 3 hours. Might go to that, honestly. Are you going to go?
Yeah, I'm planning on it. We can carpool.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty down to carpool. I don't really want to like drive there and back on my own, but if it's carpooling, it's like
Yeah, if we can get like one more person, it's like a definite go. But we'll talk about it.
How about you? How's your week been?
I went to the RTN, not a local one this weekend or last weekend. It was in Kelowna, which was about a 5-hour drive, which is longer than this drive.
Yeah, it's within the country, but it's much, and within the province, but it's much, much farther.
Yeah, it's very far, and ended up making the drive down there. I top aided that event with the same dash list with very very minor upgrades. I was gonna like revamp the whole deck and like actually play like better card than Come to Fight, but then it was like 4 days before the event. I was like, I'll do it next day. And then 2 days before the event, I was like, oh, I'll do it on Friday. And then on Friday, I was like, okay, well, I guess I just registered this list. So I ended up not doing anything about it.
Very good.
And then in top 8, I lost to Avery, who we drove up together with. And he's on Dromai. And if you listen to our episode last week, I said I lost to Dromai in the finals last week. Basically, exactly the same thing happened. They swarmed me with dragons, and I'm missing poppers that I should have in my deck that I decided not to update my deck. So completely my own fault, and I died.
Yeah. And yeah, that matchup's hard. Who ended up, well, what hero ended up winning the event?
Actually, a local, May ended up winning the RRTN there, and she was on Katsu.
May has been like a long time Katsu player. Very, very skilled, knows the deck very well. Very cool to see her go to nationals. I think she was saying this is like her first nationals, which is wild to me because she's like strong, like she's very good at the game. So like I'm just always like, this is gonna be your first nationals when she said that. I think she said that. I'm not crazy, right?
I think it's like it hasn't really been a year since she started playing, right? Because I think she came in near Outsiders.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I think she just started late, and then she's just a strong player now. So yeah, she destroyed me in like the last round, the second last round of Swiss. Like the game wasn't even close. My deck actually can, I think it's kind of like a 0% matchup for me. So on the last round of Swiss, I was actually doing more math to see if I have to concede the last round or win the last round to try and dodge her in the top 8 bracket. But because of how the brackets came up, there was no way for me to avoid her anyway. So
I see.
like playing a bad deck means that you have to do like more work in like other parts of the actual tournament. It's like, yeah, I ended up like starting 3-0 in the event, so I got to do a lot more like, maybe I should concede round 5. Maybe I'm supposed to try and win round 5. Yeah, it was kind of funny.
Sounded like a lot of fun. I kind of wanted to go, but just been a little bit too busy for that. I also had some family stuff going on that day, so I wasn't really able to.
It's also a 5-hour drive, so
it's also a 5-hour drive. Yeah, so didn't end up going to that one. Might go to this one, which is a little closer. Could be fun. All right, let's go on to the Patreon shout out. Once again, thank you to all of our patrons. The support this last month or so has been like really, really incredible. We appreciate it so much. I've been working on getting more content out. Over the last week, I've been kind of posting like a video here and there, and I have all of the top 8 of the Battle Hardened in Hartford that I won on KO. That was all recorded and on YouTube, and I basically went and reviewed all of those games and kind of gave my thought process and like kind of like what was going on as I was playing the game and what I was thinking about in those spots. yeah, hopefully that'll be cool for you to check out. Should always be more content coming down the road.
Yeah, and that's for the titanium bubble tier, right?
Yeah, that's right. So Titanium, Bauble, and up will get access to that content. There are other tiers that get access to our Discord as well, but or just our Discord, but they all come with Discord access, but some of them get the content on top of it. So yeah, if you're interested in that, you can check it out at patreon.com/onthebobble. All right. Main topic.
Yeah, let's just move right into the main topic. So today we're going to be talking about signaling in draft. So I guess let's start off with what is a signal?
A signal is like basically being able to pick up on little bits of information from the person passing to you, the person to your right in a draft who's taking cards before you, then passing you the pack in pack one, and trying to figure out like what they are drafting and which heroes are quote unquote open and which ones might be closed. Open just meaning it doesn't seem to be drafted, you're not contested for cards, and closed would be people passing to you are drafting the same hero, and so you're kind of getting like second pick over all the cards. So the signal is basically like as they take cards, theoretically, you might be able to notice a trend of like there's been warrior cards missing every pack, and every pack has 2 really good brute cards. Maybe I should be drafting brute, and the so that information that you're using about what's not in the pack in combination with what is in the pack is kind of like piecing together a story of like maybe what the person passing to you might be drafting.
I don't know, like, so if it is an 8-man draft or a 6-man draft or a 10-man draft, like, signal is going to exist, and the only thing that changes between the number of players in a draft and the signal will be what's actually coming back on the wheel. So in like a 6-man pod, then you'll see on the 7th pick, you'll see your pack again, and then you can actually basically deduce which cards has been taken and how many of which heroes exist in your pod. And the same for 8 players. On your 9th pick, you should know what cards are missing from your pack, and then if it's like a 10 or 11, you'll know that many number plus 1 picks.
Yeah, and so that's the idea of a signal. Why might that be important? Like why is it? Why are we talking about it? Why is it good to be aware of signals? What is there any advantage to thinking about these signals that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think the best example or the best advantage would be you can be on the open lane and the open hero. Sorry. Oh, you can be on the open hero. So I think in this particular set in heavy hitters, it is kind of the most advantageous of all the previous sets of being in the open hero. And we keep on saying that if you are the 2 of Guardian or the 2 of Warrior or the 2 of Brute in your draft pod, you should be set to have a good chance at 3-0ing the pod. And that's kind of important, right? Because like that's a significant difference between like being the 4th person on Brute or the 2nd person on Brute. Like there's a big difference between the deck quality when you look at when you compare decks from those 2 pods.
Yeah, I think all that's really well said. And it's also important to note that what it is not is it isn't being the 2nd warrior or guardian or brute. Sometimes you can read signals, and it might be the case that like you could have 2 people forcing every class, and then you just be the 3rd of whichever one you end up drafting. So depending on like how you start your draft and how the people around you are taking cards, sometimes you cannot be the 2 of. Like it might just be literally impossible. There might not be a 2 of to be. But if you're ever able to identify a spot where you are able to do that, it's very, very advantageous. And you can do that through primarily reading signals. Okay. So when people talk about signals, they kind of talk about them in 2 main contexts. They talk about sending signals versus reading signals. What's the difference between these 2?
So let's start with reading signals. Reading signal is very simple. That's looking at the pack that has been handed to you and try and deduce what is the open lane. I think that's about it. There's usually, if you see like multiple packs in a row with like two brute cards in it or like 2 warrior cards in it, then you'll know that the person to your right is most likely drafting Guardian. And then on vice versa, sending signals is something like purposely picking a brute card when that is the last brute card in the pack. So then the person on your left should be able to deduce that Brute is getting taken, so they don't go into Brute. And the advantages of somebody on your left not going into the same class as you will be in pack 2 when they are passing packs to you. They won't, or they shouldn't be taking the most powerful Brute card from that pack. And maybe they'll draft a Warrior or a Guardian card, so you'll get access to the best Brute card from that pack. Yeah, I think that basically sums up, like, the definitions of reading and sending a signal. And basically, this is what we're going to be talking about for the whole episode. I don't know. I think this is like it's more like a hot topic in draft than it is like we should talk about, like, say that at the end of the episode.
Which?
Like, just like saying, like, I kind of don't think sending or reading signals is kind of important, or like to the point of like having to do this all the time.
Yeah, I think it gets like a little bit overrated and like a little bit kind of over analyzed. People talk about like, oh, like I was in a pod with a new player, so they weren't able to signal. And it's just like, signaling is not this like mystic art. It's just like, if people are taking cards out of the pack, they're sending you signals. Sometimes the picks may be more coherent than others. Like you might notice that they have like, you might be aware of the 2-2-1 class common split. So not counting the foils, there's 2 of one class, 2 of another class, and 1 of the third class. And there's always exactly 5 class commons. So you might be looking to that to read signals and go, oh, okay, there's 4 class commons, so 1's taken. I see a 2, a 1, and a 1. So one of the 1s has somebody in it. And then you're like, I don't know, so like Brute or Guardian got taken. Then you go to the next pack and it's like Brute or Warrior got taken. Okay, they're probably Brute. So you might be reading in that way, but like it's not like you have to be getting passed to by like a pro gamer in order to get signals. Like everybody is sending signals whether they are trying to or not. And for this reason, I think you really don't have to worry about sending signals. Just draft the cards that you want to draft. If anything, reading, I think, is a little more important because the people to your right, like you're getting 2 packs from your right and you're getting 1 pack from your left. So reading has more weight since there's more packs where you're getting the like free flow of cards. And that being said, you also don't always have to read signals. Sometimes your deck is just good enough that you can kind of cement in and just hope that it's good enough. You only have a little bit of time to do this. So I think that it does get kind of like, I think people are like too extreme on both sides. They say like there's no point in reading signals, or it's completely impossible to read signals in Fab. And then people also have like the opposite extreme take of like, you have to always read signals and you have to always stay super open. You have to send signals. And it's like, I don't know if I quite agree with either one. It's like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think so too. What's really funny is like I hear people doing very well in Flesh and Blood with like all the strategies. There's some people that are like, no pivot, no scout, no matter what set it is. And then there are people who's like, I'm gonna stay open until the first pack of pack 2, never cement onto anything. And then there's also people like you who's like, I'll do both. Like I'll be flexible and do whichever seems to be the right choice here. So like it seems like there hasn't really been like a dominant strategy in Flesh and Blood on like not reading signals or reading signals, sending signals, on all of that. So I think this episode is more going to be about what it is and how to do it, I think, is like what we want to get at.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that you should be doing it, but it's things that you can maybe think about if you're looking to try different styles of drafting, or if you're just wanting to like improve at draft. I think understanding different styles and how to implement them and when to implement them is really important. So let's get into it. You are receiving packs from your right and you're trying to read the signals of what they are in. What picks, how early do these signals start? Is it as early as so obviously your first pack, there's no signal because nobody's taken any cards from it. So is it as early as like pack 1, pick 2, or is there like a certain point where you're like starting to look to read signals?
There isn't like a really concrete answer, obviously, but I think the main way to decide if there should be a signal or there might be a signal is number 1 is to look at what rarity of card that has been taken. In Flesh and Blood, it's very, very concrete on what rarities are in each pack. So as we said earlier, there's going to be 1 foil, 2 rare, 1 could be a majestic, and the rest of them are going to be commons. So number 1, check for the foil. If there is the foil remaining, there's 2 rares and the rest commons still in your pack. And then you check for the rares. If both the rares are still in your pack, then someone took a common. And then I think at that point, you know if there should be a signal or not, because we know how the commons are distributed in the packs. So I think number one is you want to look at when the common is missing from your pack, and that should be like a very strong indicator on which class cards are starting to disappear.
Yeah. And you can also kind of get the opposite of like seeing a very strong card late that you wouldn't expect to see if it was open. So like maybe you get past a pack with like, I don't know, 2 brute cards, pack 7 or pick 7, and there's like a red assault and battery, and you're like, that red assault and battery is going way too late. That's probably a signal that brute is open. So sometimes it can be like what's missing from the pack, and sometimes it can also be what's in the pack and is maybe they're a little bit late. I think one of the important things to remember about signals that I hear, especially new players, talk about all the time and kind of get thrown for a loop is you're kind of trying to read signals across multiple packs. You're not just looking at one pack and you go, this card, this one is the signal. Now I'm a brute. You know, I got past 7th pick assault and battery. I have to be brute. Like that was just like the signal. And it's rarely kind of like that. It's usually kind of like, I think it's, for me, it's usually around kind of like picks 4 through 7. I'm paying attention to what's missing and what's present. And I'm trying to feel like, is there a trend here? Oh, there's not that many warrior cards. Oh, there's not many warrior cards. Oh, there's not many warrior cards. Oh, there's 0 warrior cards. Okay, warrior is not open. But it's usually kind of built up across a number of packs rather than just like, it's never just like one pack, right? Because like sometimes a pack just has like a really good card. Sometimes you're just like, oh, there's like a red lead with speed. Like obviously brute and warrior are open, second pick red lead with speed, but it's just like they might have just taken like flat trackers. You know, like there could just be some other card that's just better.
Like if you are putting too much weight into one pack, you can't get into that kind of same trouble. The pack could have started with like flat tracker, lead with speed, foil lead with speed, red, and an agile wind up yellow. You know, and then okay, no, that can't happen, can it? 'Cause they're both brute warrior cards.
Yeah, that might not be able to happen. I'm not sure.
Okay, but either way, if they have like a flat trackers, lead with speed, agile wind up in one pack, and then it's like your 5th pick, and then you see the red assault and battery, and you're like, oh, the red assault and battery was the only thing left in that pack for brute, and you're like, oh, no one on my right's in brute, but that wasn't the case. The first 3 people could have just picked 3 premium brute cards as well, and then you could have been brute number 4 if you saw that card next. So you just need to be aware that that can happen, and just because you see a card that should be powerful in your deck doesn't mean that was the most powerful card in that class. I think there are some exceptions though. If you see something like a Blade Fury in your pack and it's like pick 5, it's most likely Warriors is open, right?
Yeah, I think there's probably like a few Majestics you could put in that category. Like Prime Defight's probably like that. The Good Time Chapeau is probably like that.
Or like Knucklehead.
Knucklehead. Yeah, there are a few of those like super bomby cards where you're just like, yeah, okay, there's like no way that anybody is drafting this hero, and this is just like incredibly strong here. I don't know. It's good to be able to identify that.
Yeah, mostly pack 1, right? Because like once you start going to like pack 2, pack 3, you're gonna end up in these things where you get past Knucklehead, but then maybe the guy to the right already opened a Knucklehead, so
Yeah.
they're still in brute. So I think these bomby cards could be a signal, but that's still only applicable to like pack 1. So I would still be just because you see one really powerful card in a pack doesn't mean that hero is open. It's a strong indication it might be, but you need more points of evidence than that to solidify that saying, Brute's gonna be open in this pack.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like each pack being like some evidence, and you're like, I saw this red assault and battery. And maybe you take it, right? And then you go next pack. Okay, what am I looking for? I'm looking for something similar. I'm looking for a continuation of that trend that, hey, there's really good brute cards. And if I notice 0 brute cards playable, or the only brute card is like, I don't know, like one of the like hybrid 2 for 4, 2 blocks or something, and you're just like, this is technically a brute card, but it's like, it's not good. you want to give yourself like time ideally to kind of feel things out and kind of like build a case of like this is likely what is there and likely what isn't. So it's good that you're noticing the assault and battery. Just don't go all in because you see one card. And similarly, don't go all in because you go, oh, this pack has no no brute cards. Clearly, brute is cut. Sometimes people just take one brute card and then they move off a brute and then it's open. So it could have been like a one brute common pack. Like it could just be a light pack. So just don't jump to conclusions on either end. I think is the best piece of advice. You kind of want to build it out. Kind of usually between picks 4 through 7. I'm trying to decide what's open. What should I be drafting?
The next subject would be like speculating on classes. So like what does that mean, Yuki? Like what does speculating on classes mean?
So to me, this might be that assault and battery pick that we talked about. Maybe you draft strong generic, test of strength. You draft like wage might. So you have a wage might red. You have a brute guardian red card. You draft a concuss red, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm guardian. And then pick 4, you see the assault and battery red, and you go, maybe brute is what I'm supposed to be. And maybe this pack also lines up where there's not a good guardian card. Maybe there's like maybe there's just like some yellows, like there's like 2 yellow, there's like a yellow and a blue big bop in the pack or something. And you're just like, if I'm supposed to be guardian, I'm not really going to miss this card. In those spots, I might look to speculate on that assault and battery, or it could even be a warrior card in this spot. Honestly, if there was like really not that much that I'm giving up, I might even speculate on a warrior card. And the idea is that I'm not committing to the idea that, oh, okay, I got an assault and battery 4th pick, brute's open, but I'm saying I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to continue to read signals and continue to try and find evidence that brute might be open and figure out what I should be doing. And I could just go back and continue to draft guardian, but I'm sort of by picking up that assault and battery, I'm suddenly giving myself the flexibility to switch to brute if I need to later in the pack. Whereas if I just keep drafting like, the yellow big bop and just hoping that guardian's open and then later it isn't, I can really be in trouble. So you can think of speculating on a class as just like taking a flexible pick. Maybe it doesn't go with your other picks, but it lets you kind of start building towards that class if you think that it might be open later on.
I think we talked about this in an earlier episode too, but like how many cards can you do this with? Like how late can we do this? Like can we do this like, at the end of pack 1, or does it have to be, that can only happen like earlier than that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest indication for it is how many cards you would be giving up if you are changing between 2 different decks, specifically 2 different heroes. So, for example, if I have like 2 brute cards, 2 guardian cards, and 5 brute guardian hybrids, and like a generic, I'm pretty okay because if I play brute, I just give up the 2 guardian cards. I can play all the hybrids in the generic. If I play guardian, I can still, draft guardian and only give up the 2 brute cards. So I'm actually still quite flexible. On the other hand, if you draft guardian card, guardian card, guardian card, you're kind of already at the point of like, maybe you pick up the assault and battery, but if your 5th pick is another guardian card, you might just be hard committed to guardian at that point. So I like taking a couple of generics or hybrids. Don't give up too much power level. Like if the best card in the pack is a class card, take the class card. But I like trying to pick a few powerful hybrids or generics just to give myself that option to stay a little bit open, and then make 1 or 2 speculative picks and then think about like, can I take this guardian card here? Yeah, I only would be giving up 2 picks if I went guardian. That's acceptable. Or you know what, I have to give up 5 picks to go guardian. That's too late. Because you need a 30 card deck plus your 4 equipment. If you give up 4 picks, that's already 38 of your 42 cards, and you're probably going to have some bad cards in the back of the pack. So you really can't afford to give up more than like 3-ish cards at most.
I see. So do you have this number just like in the back of your head while you're drafting?
Yeah.
So like in the higher tier events like Pro Tours and these called drafts where you can't pick up your draft and like double check what you've picked so far, except for in between packs, or is this something that you have a mental note of just be like, oh, I have this many generics, this many guardian, this many brute cards?
Yeah, I do have that in the back of my head, and I in particular try to remember like especially like the class the class specific cards because those are the kind of the ones that lock you in. And I try and keep a count in the back of my head of like how much I am. And often you'll kind of know like, so if I pick Brute Guardian, 2 hybrids, and then I pick a Brute card and a Guardian card, at that point I probably know I'm not Warrior, right? So it's just like I'm either Brute or Guardian. I have 2 hybrids and 1 of each kind of thing. And I'll just condense it down to that. I'll stop remembering Warrior because I've decided I'm not Warrior at that point. So usually it's just kind of between 2 classes, and I'm just sort of keeping a mental note so that I know how much space I have to be flexible and take those speculative picks, or maybe I'm starting to get tight on playables and I need to just commit to something and make sure I have a playable deck.
So I know this is kind of not exactly about signaling, but how are you, like, in pack 1, are you keeping track of, like, let's say, like, how many blues you've picked up and how many reds you've picked up? Or are you checking that in between packs during your, like, what is that called?
Review period.
The review period. Yeah, during the review period.
I'm typically remembering my reds and blues as well. Specifically the blue count I typically remember. The reds I don't often remember as well. I kind of often just think of in terms of like blues and non-blues, and like my reds and yellows are ideally threats. I'll sometimes kind of remember certain reds that I have. But yeah, I would say in particular it's usually the blue count, and the biggest thing is like I want to try and take a number of blues equal to a third of the total blues I want in my deck each pack. So if I want 8 blues in my final deck, I'm hoping to take like a third of that would be 3. So I'm hoping to take like around 3 blues for the first pack, around 3 blues for the second pack, and then I should be able to pick up the 2 to 3 blues in the third pack, and that'll be okay. And it's not to say that I can't deviate from that, but I like to aim for that to make sure that I'm sort of like set up to be on pace for blues. And if I notice I'm behind, I can move them up in my pick order. So I am doing that, both during the review, but also during the draft process. So like if I know that I've only taken 1 blue and I've taken a lot of good reds and I'm choosing between a good red threat or a good blue 3 block, I might take the blue 3 block to round it out, kind of thing.
Yeah, that would make sense. And I do very similar things too. Yeah, I was just curious on what you do. I guess we'll go back into actually the signaling portion of the draft too now. I guess the next question would be, how often do you pivot in? You see that like a specific hero is open. How willing are you to pivot into that open lane?
I'm usually pretty willing to pivot. It will depend how flexible my draft started when I notice. But ideally, I like to be putting myself in a spot where I am able to pick up on those signals and I am able to pivot. And that's something I'm sort of like aiming to do in most drafts because I like the flexibility it gives me. It very much like increases like the floor of your decks, I think is what it does. It helps avoid being like the 5th warrior because you just locked in warrior, because maybe you can read the signals that you shouldn't be warrior, and even if you jump a little bit late to like Brute or Guardian and it's not fantastic, it might still be better than being the 5th warrior. So yeah, basically, as long as I'm not giving up more than 3 cards, I'm pretty willing to pivot. That being said, if you ask me like, what is the ideal way for my draft to go? The ideal way for my draft to go is I just start drafting Guardian and I maybe take a few like hedging picks or speculative picks, and then I just keep drafting Guardian from there because it's open. That's always the ideal. That's always what you want. It's just that sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and sometimes you start one class and then you need to switch, and switching is more beneficial than just continuing to go because you have a couple strong cards for that class.
I see. I guess then what would be the risks of the pivoting then? Like, what can happen if you pivot, and either if you're wrong or if it doesn't go well?
Yeah, so if you pivot into a class, especially if it's too late, you can run the risk of not having playables. You can also run the risk of pivoting into a class when others are also pivoting into a class. So sometimes it could be that there was 2 Guardians, but then if you pivot into Guardian and someone else also pivots into Guardian, you can just wind up in a 4 Guardian pod, which is really awkward. So that's part of the reason I prefer to stay the class that I am rather than pivot into a class. But you draft the best deck that you can draft, I guess.
How often has that happened to you, where you like ended up pivoting into something and then somebody else also pivots around the same time, and there's like everyone kind of train wrecks together?
Honestly, not that much. I find that it doesn't happen that often. I actually feel like it might happen more often the other way, where I start in a hero and I'm like, yeah, this hero is open, and then I get cut and I'm not expecting it. I feel like usually if I pivot, I'm pretty good at identifying that that's the hero that I should be, because like I will bias towards like staying the same class if I can.
I guess that's because you already have a couple of picks for that class, right?
Yeah, just like if you can play your first, if you can play more of your early picks, your deck's probably better, right? Like I don't want to like pivot and give up cards. It's just if I have to, I'm willing to, and I want to give myself the option to be able to do that if it seems beneficial to be able to do so. But I'm not like I'm gonna start warrior and then become a guardian later in the drafts because I can show everyone how I can pivot. Like that's not the goal. It's just sometimes you have to, you know.
Yeah, that's fair. And then the next question will be like, how are we sending signals then? Like, in the same context of like reading signals and like when should you pivot and things like that. When are you sending signals, or like when you're like consciously trying to like send something, send a signal? Like, what are you doing?
Honestly, I'm almost not sending signals at all. I think in sets where you do have these like clear signifiers as like sort of like pseudo bomb cards, I would note if I pass that. So if there is a bet big in the pack, or a prime to fight in the pack, and I decide to pass that, at that point I'm like, well, I'm probably not guardian, because I passed like a literal guardian bomb to my left. That person's probably going to be guardian, and especially if it's like early in the pack. Like I'm just like, if I pass this card, I can't be guardian. But also in that spot, I would probably just pick up the card and speculate on it. So I often try to not put myself in this spot. But if I decide that there's like an equally powerful card that is already in the hero that I'm playing, I might take that and then go, okay, I passed a bet big. I can't really pivot to guardian anymore. Or like if I pivot to guardian, the person to my left is also going to be guardian. So I do note that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I'm pretty much not worrying about sending signals. Maybe occasionally as like a tiebreaker, if I'm trying to decide between like, I'm KO, I'm trying to decide between like an agile windup or a lead with speed. And they both seem very attractive. Maybe that's a bad example. Assault in a battery and a lead with speed. And they're both very attractive. And maybe I think lead with speed is a little bit better. But occasionally I might decide to take the Assault and Battery there, especially if it's like the only brute common. So I can just say, hey, brute's cut, I'm brute, and send that signal. But I'm not wanting to give up a bunch of power level. Like I'm not picking, I don't know, yellow wild ride over the lead with speed, for example, to send a signal. Like that's just not good.
I guess a better example would probably be something like, let's say there's like a yellow assault and battery versus a, what's a generic that's good? Like a test of strength?
Yeah.
Like, would you be willing to pick up the last yellow assault and battery, which will be the last brute card in the pack, and pass like a relatively good generic for it?
Um, I think it depends on how sure I am brute and how powerful my deck is. If I have a lot of really powerful cards and I just really want to cut brute, I may do that. But in the vast majority of cases, I'm just going to take the more powerful card, the test of strength.
Okay, yeah. So you don't prioritize sending signals like by cutting a specific class common and making sure people to your right knows, or sorry, to your left knows that you're picking brute.
No, I don't like doing this. I have tried this drafting style before, and I would recommend that you try it because there are good players that do this and get results. The problem that I ran into is just like, you don't know if the person to your left cares. The person to your left, you know what I mean? Like the person to your left might just be forcing Reinar or whatever, or forcing KO or forcing Kasai, and you're just like, okay, like it doesn't matter that I passed you the bet big. Maybe their whole draft ethos is just never draft Guardian. Guardian sucks. Then it doesn't matter what you pass them. So like this idea of like sending signals is just like so unreliable. And when I have done it, it's like kind of hurt me. So I had a pack where it was like Nationals 2022 Uprising draft, and I think I was choosing between like an Icelander, like a very good Icelander card from a pack full of very, very good Icelander cards. Like I would take the chess piece and pass like just like all the best Icelander cards. And I was just like, maybe I don't want to deal with this. I'm just going to pick like Dromai instead and cut Dromai because I can send a really good Dromai signal. And then I just ended up being the third Dromai because everybody to my left just kept passing the Icelander cards and there was only one Icelander at the table. And I was just like, I should have just drafted the thing that I wanted to draft rather than trying to cut Dromai and send a signal that Dromai's cut. Just like draft the thing. And that's largely been my experience with sending signals, is just like I try to do it, the person to my left does not care, and then I get punished for it. So like, or like they don't go into the deck. Like I'm just like, here, draft this, and they're like, nah, I don't feel like it. I'm avoiding that class. Or sometimes it's even, nah. I know that you're taking Guardian cards. I don't care because I have Golden Sun. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like they could just open a card and it doesn't matter what you take from the pack because they already have Golden Sun, or they already have Cast Bones, or they already have Blade Flurry. Like they have their bomb and they're just like, this is it. I'm locked. And just like, why are you trying to send signals to this person that just might not care?
Yeah, I guess in this set it'll be more of like, I have Knucklehead, I have Betsy's specialization ahead, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
It's so hard to push people off those cards that it's almost to a point where you can be the Guardian passing to them and they'll just have the worst Guardian deck, right?
Yeah, that's the big thing, is like sometimes I've had drafts where like I'm the first Guardian, the second Guardian's to my left, and then because we're two Guardians next to each other, we just hard cut Guardian and everybody bails from Guardian. And you know what? That situation's really good for me because yeah, maybe pack 2 sucks, but pack 1 and 3, I just get all the best Guardian cards, like the entire pack. It's so good.
I guess this is like a related question, but like I know what I've seen before, but like what have you seen before of like hero distribution? Like is it always like, oh, like the two opposite ends are drafting different heroes, and like vice versa, so like everyone's kind of spread apart, or do you see like a lot of like clumps together where it's like, oh, it's like Guardian, and then like Warrior, Brute kind of thing?
Honestly, I feel like I see both. I feel like both happen. I feel like hypothetically, if everybody's drafting like air quotes correctly, then you should have the person across from you on the same hero. But also just like drafts don't always work out that way. And as soon as you have like the situation that we were describing where somebody just like, I start out and I'm like, in my seat, Brute's super open, and the person to my left is like, I have Knucklehead. I'm also Brute. I'm still getting past good Brute cards. As soon as that happens, then like the other classes might also bunch up. So it doesn't take that much for things to bunch up, and I feel like I see both. What about you? Do you see one more than the other?
I think I agree with you. I see both, and typically once it starts to bunch up, then it really does like it bunches up everywhere, and then when it is spread out, I think it is commonly very spread out. So like that's kind of interesting in a way to think about. Like I guess if when one class starts to really bunch together, then the whole pod actually like has like these groupings of spots where everyone's bunched together. I wonder why that is.
I think there's just like a tendency for it to happen because like if there's like three brutes in a row, then the person to their left, like let's say they started Warrior, they're just going to be like, Warrior is so open because there's there's just like nobody taking Warrior cards. And then somebody to their left might just be like, man, I got this like, I don't know, this fifth pick like Draw Swords Red or something. That's insane. And it's just because like three people to their right are just on Brute from the beginning, and so they see the super late card and they're like, oh, this is like a signal, and it's just like, yeah, it is a signal. So I feel like that happens a lot.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah. So then, like, well, like they can't go into Brute, so their only options is to either also be in Warrior or be in Guardian. But I'm assuming there aren't any good Guardian cards in there, or somebody would have picked the Guardian card before that. So
yeah, sometimes that can be the case.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting though. Like just the thought experiment of like, why does it clump up so much when there is like an initial clumping somewhere?
Yeah, I feel like there should be like a math proof of like why this happens more likely, but I'm too lazy.
Yeah, I'm not that much of a math nerd to try and figure this out. But now that I think about it, yeah, there's like very rare for it to have some like super small clumps and like it being spread out everywhere else. But like when there is clumps, it like kind of clumps everywhere. Like all the classes are kind of clumped.
Yeah, I think you're kind of just like more likely. Like if there's like three brutes next to each other, there's like only 5 slots to distribute the like 3 warriors or whatever. So I think you might just be like at that point like significantly more likely for people to continue to be clumped.
I see. Just like a probability thing.
I think so. Like it is, of course, like it's not completely random, but I would suspect that that's kind of the case.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess let's move on to talking about the other strategy. Or the first strategy we're talking about is like reading signals and like sending signals and like trying to be on the open lane. I guess the opposite would be forcing. What is forcing?
Forcing is when you kind of early on decide that you are going to be drafting a hero and then you stick with it and you basically don't pay attention to signals. So it doesn't matter what people are passing you or aren't passing you, you are going to continue drafting that hero. I guess unless you literally can't. Like sometimes you try to force and you just don't see cards for that class and it's like, well, okay. But yeah, that is the idea behind forcing. And usually you like basically always wind up on the hero that you're trying to force if you decide to force. Some players go into the draft deciding like I'm gonna force Phi was like a super common one, or like in this format I think there's like some Kasai forcers or KO forcers, but some people just go into the draft forcing a hero. Some people also will take a first pick and then force a hero based on that first pick. So they might see I got a Skullbone, I am forcing KO, or I got a Bet Big, I'm forcing Betsy, or whatever it is.
We do see some higher level players doing this, right? Like going into a draft knowing that they're only gonna draft Teklo Vesson from Bright Lights or Phi from Uprising, Kasai from this set. Do you think this is a good strategy?
Honestly, like I think it depends a little bit on the set. Like some sets is better, some sets is worse. I think at this point, like there's enough people that do it and have good results that you can't really say it like doesn't work. It's not my preferred strategy. I think that it introduces more variance to your draft. You can have very bad drafts where you're forcing and your hero is overdrafted, but you can also have very good drafts where you're forcing and then your hero is open and then you just get rewarded because you were in that hero all along. So I feel like it kind of like creates probably like more 3-0s and less 2-1s. And more like 1, 2, and 0, 3 decks. So that's sort of like how I see forcing. And I think it depends on the set. Like I think like Uprising, it was like relatively easy to force Phi because his card pool was so deep and he was so powerful. And I think that was like very strong. I know that you forced Prism in Monarch for similar reasons. The card pool is really, really deep. And one of the cool things about forcing a hero, I think, in Flesh and Blood is you learn like all the corner cases for the like not so desirable cards. When can you play them? How can you get the most out of them? And so there actually is like quite a bit of nuance and skill to forcing a deck. It's just in it's more in like format knowledge and understanding that deck really well than it is necessarily like navigating the draft itself super well.
I think the forcing. So I think the level 1 forcing is just sticking to the hero and picking cards for that hero. But there is like a higher level enforcing of just like knowing which card is like has a slight percentage edge in that hero and like which generics are slightly better, which yellows are slightly better, which blues are slightly better. And then you being the best player on that hero in your pod is kind of important. So like you end up with like kind of comfortably assume that not everyone that is drafting in your pod knows exactly what they're doing, even in these like high end events, like at the PT or even at the Pro Tour, right? Like you can
Mm-hmm,
kind of
mm-hmm.
assume not everyone has drafted the set like 40 times.
Yeah, I think people are not necessarily always strong at draft. Often, as you get into like day 2 drafts, like if you're at the high tables, like the pods do get stronger. But yeah, don't give people at the table too much credit. They may force, they may not know what they're doing, and sometimes yeah. And I think forcing is like a pretty legitimate strategy as well. We've seen a lot of people have success with it, so there's nothing wrong with forcing if that's what works for you. But it's good to try different things, and I think that Heavy Hitters is very much a set that does reward staying open, like we've been talking about. Jay, I have a question for you. If you have to pick one, only force or only stay open for the rest of the time that you draft Flesh and Blood, which one would you pick?
Ooh, that's kind of interesting. Um, I kind of enjoy forcing in a format that's like not solved, but like when there's a definite strong hero and it's strong enough, then I do like forcing. But I guess for the rest of Flesh and Blood, I'll have to say stay open, because that's typically what I always do until I figure out that like, oh, this hero is so strong that I think I can be like Prism number 6 and still win a pod, which is what I kind of felt like when Monarch was a thing. I actually didn't think Uprising was even like that 5 favored. I didn't want to be 5 number 6.
Mhm.
So I don't even agree with like the 5 forcers in Uprising. And in the Teklovas enforcers in Bright Lights, I kind of thought like that's like an unviable strategy. Like you couldn't even force Teklovas if you wanted to. So I guess I'm in the camp of like, if I think forcing is the best strategy, I want to be forcing, and then I want to find all the corner cases of like being Prism number 5. But I think in general, you just have more success staying open than forcing.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I think some people they kind of shy away from staying open because it takes some practice and there's some nuance to it. And I think that there's a lot to learn. And when you do it wrong, you can get bit for it. Like this is something that, if you're going to your first pro tour, I wouldn't like listen to this episode and be like, I'm going to try and stay open. And I've never done this before. Like that's probably not going to go well for you. It is something that takes a lot of practice and refinement. But I think it does give you a lot of consistency. Something that we've also talked before in the podcast, but I'll just kind of reiterate, is that because forcing is kind of better at making 3-0 decks, I will lean more towards a forcing style of draft if I know I need to 3-0 the pod. So if I'm in a spot where like I need to win out in order to have a chance at top cut, I am very inclined to force, or at least like soft force where I'm like almost forcing, but if the hero is like truly cut, I will pivot. But I'm willing to do that if I really need the 3-0 because it feels like the most reliable way to 3-0. Even if your chances of like your overall win percentage might not be higher, but your chance of 3-0 is the highest. Like if 3-0 is the only thing you care about, it does make that number the highest.
Yeah. So it really depends on like what you're trying to do. I don't know if this is like this is the way that I draft isn't actually based off of like reading signals or sending signals or forcing or any of that. It's in my head I have like expected values of each card and each pick. And those values get like derived from the literal card value, like the TCG player dollar value, and the dollar value of like how strong it makes my deck versus the prize payout of that tournament kind of thing. So like sometimes you'll see like drafts that I do where I'm just like, this draft has like, 8 majestics from like all the different classes, and it's just like, yeah, they're dollar each. It's just worth more than 3-0ing this draft. So like you can't force me off. Like you can't make me not pick these cards because it's like worth 40 cents more than picking this like playable red.
Yeah, Jay has a very interesting way of viewing draft. Very EV focused.
It's very hard to explain my draft process to some people, mostly in like armories and stuff like that, because like the value of you winning the event is typically very low, and depending on what the cold foil that you get for that month, it really changes the way that I draft that month. So it's kind of, yeah, I don't know how to explain how I draft. It's kind of weird.
Is there a card worth lots of money? Take that card. Is there a card worth $1? Consider taking that card, but only if the card in your deck giving you chances to win isn't worth more.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way of saying it. Yeah, that is the best way of saying it.
Maybe it gives you enough win percentage towards the prize that it's just like on average worth more.
But yeah, I think there are lots of different ways to draft in Flesh and Blood, and like the reasons why you pick a card can just be different from what other people are thinking about. So reading and sending signals can like really change depending on who's sitting to your right, who's sitting to your left. And it's kind of important to know if it's their first draft, if it's not their first draft, how much experience that player has. And sometimes like you can even go into a draft knowing someone's like tendencies by like reading what they post on Twitter or
Mm-hmm.
having a conversation with them before the draft. This is like, yeah, these are like soft skills to have at like higher level events. Just like, oh, you see Yuki to your right, you know she's gonna have this like be open style drafting, so you know she's not forcing, right? So like you need to be prepared that if her hero is cut, that she might pivot off. So She might pivot into your hero if it was very open too. So like you just need to know some of these stuff before going in and sitting down at your draft. And it's not always possible, but it does and it will give you percentage points just knowing this information too.
Yeah. Don't ask though. You cannot sit down and like ask people what they're going to draft. That is, don't do that. That is illegal.
Yeah, that's technically against the rules.
Yeah.
You can have a conversation in between rounds being like, "Oh, what do you think the best hero is?" And then they go, "Force 5, no pivot, no scout." And then they're no pivot, no scout at Force 5. So
yeah, another common one that I hear sometimes was like, "How did your first draft go?" And then they talk about their first draft and you're like, "Oh, you drafted Teklovosin. Fascinating."
And then if they start going off about, "Man, I don't like this format because the only thing you can do is play Teklo-Vossen," you kind of know what they're going to draft.
Yeah, it definitely happens. I feel like this is not really like supposed to happen, but it does happen. I'm usually not the one asking those questions, but it is worth listening to the table chatter if there is some anyways. The last thing I kind of want to talk about, we talked a lot about signals staying open as well as forcing a little bit. There kind of is like a third one that you can think of as like maybe a little bit of a blend between the two. And I actually like this one a lot. I do this one a fair bit, and that's drafting with preferences. So it's sort of understanding that maybe in a certain format, there's a certain hero that I don't want to be, or I want to be one of two classes a lot more than I want to be the third class. I think in heavy hitters, that's not the case. I'm pretty happy being any of the classes. But different formats have different heroes that you may lean towards or may not like. In Outsiders, for example, I often didn't really want to draft Ranger unless I felt Ranger was like super, super open. I would lean towards Assassin and Ninja just because it was far more consistent. So my preference would be lean away from the Ranger cards. If there's like a really good Ranger card and a really good Assassin card, I'm going to take the Assassin card and prefer to draft that hero and wind up in that hero more often. I did this in Monarch too. I would try to avoid Leviathan. If Leviathan was by far the most open thing, yeah, I'll draft it. If it's super open, I will draft it. But somebody's got to really prove to me that it's open, because otherwise, like unless they're like hitting me over the head with it, I'm gonna prefer to be one of the other three decks and try to lean that way. I also had like a pretty big chain preference in that draft, so if I could be chain, I tried to be chain, but sometimes you cannot be chain.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for you, locally, we all knew that you had a preference of drafting Iyslander.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard to convince some people to draft Iyslander in that format, or actually non-fi. So you almost always were an Iyslander.
Yep.
And like I was in Outsiders, or not Outsiders, sorry, it was Uprising. In Uprising for me, I was like pretty okay drafting any of the three heroes. Because Fi was so heavily drafted, I ended up in Iyslander so often too. And it's like, once you know how to draft like these heroes, sometimes it's even better than just drafting the forced hero, right? Like, I guess Bright Lights, it was like Teklo-Vossen Force was the most common in the community. And, you went out there and just like basically you drafted with a preference on, who was it? Dash IO? Is that what it's called? No, Dash Database?
Dash Database.
Yeah, Dash Database, which is a new Dash. And like you crushed that draft format, right?
Yeah. I went in going like, I know that Teklo is overdrafted. So I'm gonna hedge Dash Max by prioritizing boost cards. And I have had pods in that format where Teklo ends up being open and I get past late Evos. And then I just have a really good Teklo deck because I have all the good boost cards and I have late Evos. So it's not like I won't draft Teklo-Vossen. It's just that I'm setting myself up to be either Dash or Max, preferably Dash. So if I see like the key Dash cards, I will take them. And that kind of like gives me the chance to have like the benefits of the like force Dash strat where like I force Dash and it's open and I get a really good deck. But we didn't really see this in Worlds because I got a very good Dash deck both times. But part of my draft strategy in that format was that if Dash is cut, if I'm not seeing the items that I want, I will go Max, and I can often end up with a pretty good Max deck. And I was actually okay, like even taking like maybe a flexible item, like maybe I take like like the mini force fields and the dissolving shields were like still really good cards in Max. So I liked having those in my back pocket, and then I could kind of like hedge between the two of them and steer away from Teklo Vossen. So that was sort of like my Bright Lights drafting strategy. So you don't always have to be like, just because you're reading signals doesn't mean that you have to be like agnostic and just be like, like wherever the wind takes me, I'm going to draft that hero. You can say I like drafting these heroes, but not these heroes, and I'm going to draft whichever one of these two is more open, and maybe the third one if it's like super duper open. Like, they pass you like all the evil upgrade cards late, they pass you all the good evils late, you're like, okay, I will take one for the team and I'll be the Teklo. But like otherwise, unless you literally hand me the deck, I'm not going to do it. That sort of thing. And I think that this is like super super valid, and maybe like more descriptive of how I draft than truly staying open, just because your time to read signals in Fab is so short that very often I think you kind of want to be leaning a certain way and then give yourself flexibility, just like enough flexibility.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Okay, I think, is there anything else you want to talk about signaling in draft before we wrap up the episode?
I think that's a bit about it for me. How about you?
Yeah, no, I think we talked everything about signaling that we can think of, at least today. There are other drafting strategies that I guess we could talk in a different episodes. We will see if that becomes an episode, later in the week.
As always, thank you so much for listening. Hope that you enjoyed this, and hopefully will help you in your final week of RTNs, or perhaps at the Pro Tour if you have that coming up, or side events at the Pro Tour or whatever it might be. If you have any questions that you want on the show, please let us know. It could also be like requests for content ideas. We are kind of like moving out of this draft format pretty soon. I think we're pretty close to being done with heavy hitters at the moment. There's, we've kind of done most of our usual topics on the show. We may add in one, I'm not sure, but there is room for other topics to get discussed here, and I think one we're going to be looking at doing in the future is around sort of like mental game that one of our patrons requested. So I think we will be looking at doing something like that in the future. And if there's something that you would love to hear us talk about, please do let us know, either in the comments or on Discord, or pretty much through any avenue is fine. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do so on social media. Jay is at Ueda J, and I'm at Yuki Lee Bender. That's on Twitter. You can also email us directly at onthebobble@gmail.com with your feedback and comments there, or reach out to us via Discord if you're a Patreon member. I think that's pretty much going to wrap us up for this week. Have a good night, everyone. Good luck. Okay, sign off. I feel like a lot of people have been talking about this game recently, but I started playing it 2 days ago. It's called Balatro. Have you heard of this game?
Oh yeah, I've seen a couple people play this game. A couple of my friends just like recently downloaded and started playing it, and yeah, this game looks kind of fun. Well, you gonna explain the game a little bit, Yuki?
Yeah, so it's a roguelike deck builder. So if you played like Slay the Spire, Wild Frost, games like this, the Balatro is in the same vein as that. Basically, you start with a deck of cards, you get to build that deck of cards and modify and change it and add cards and remove cards and all of that kind of stuff. And then you also get to get different like items that enable your build and give you like extra points for like scoring certain types of hands. So the gimmick of Balatro is that it's all like poker hand based. So you have like a regular 52 card deck of cards, and then over time you may change those cards. So you may like end up with like extra aces of spades, and you can draw like multiple ace of spades. And you can also get things that like, if you make a hand with spades, you get extra points. And so you're kind of like tailoring your whole deck towards your deck and your items towards like a specific build. And it's quite fun. If you like deck building, it's pretty enjoyable. And basically you have to just like keep getting your deck better and better at making points so that you can continue advancing. And if you fail to make enough points on an encounter, then you lose and you have to restart over. So that's kind of the roguelike aspect of it. You kind of like do a run until you defeat like the end boss and you get enough points in enough time. And if you're unable to, you restart. And if you are able to, I guess you still restart, but you won.
I see. Is it I guess is it just a single player game?
Yeah, it's just a single player game. It's available on Steam and I think the Switch. But it does make for a decent, it's not a bad game to like, if you have somebody that's really interested in the game, it's not, it's quite like backseatable where like one person can stream and you can discuss. The gameplay is like sometimes a little bit hard, but the, certainly like all the decisions of like, which like power ups do we get, or like do we want to be like the spade deck or do we want to be like the flush deck, or like, you know, something like whatever. There's like different build options that you have, and if you enjoy thinking about that kind of thing, if you both do, then it's like not a bad experience for more than one person.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, it's this. Like I play a lot of poker, and this game, like a lot of my friends were just talking about this, so looks pretty fun to play. I don't think this is a kind of game for me. I kind of prefer just always being PvP related. Like I've been playing a lot of TFT recently, and man, that game's addictive once you start playing it. Oh, and that's basically just another deck
Yeah.
builder.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, that might be something up some of our viewers
Yeah.
alley, because card games, deck building, if you enjoy that kind of thing, highly recommend checking it out. The game's pretty cheap too. I think I picked it up for like 18 Canadian dollars.
Yeah, it
Like
says 19. It's 18.99 Canadian on Steam is what it says.
18.99. There you go. Yeah, and I've already played it like 5 hours, so I feel like I've already kind of gotten my money's worth, and I still think I want to play it a bunch. So
Amazing. Sorry, what was the name of the game again?
I think it's Balatro, Balatro. Oh, the one thing I'll say is the graphics for this game are not fantastic. If you care a lot about graphics, you may not be happy. It kind of reminds me of like, I don't even know, like early 2000s. Like you like open solitaire, it like almost like has that kind of appearance. It's like a little bit different. It's like a little more modern than that, but it is like certainly like that kind of like era. And
I think it seems intentional, right? Like,
yeah, I think it is intentional. It's just like they go with like a standard deck of poker cards and they make it very much like, you know, like you have like the digital poker cards, but they're like not all that high resolution, but you see all the cards, and it's very much like that. So I don't know, if you're like hoping for like that's something that I would say like Slay the Spire or Wild Frost has over it, is like you have these like enemies with like these animations and they like look interesting and all of this stuff. This game is literally just numbers. Like you have your deck, you make score, your score goes up, your ability to make bigger score gets better, and then you do it. So yeah, it's a lot of poker hands and numbers, and there's like there are builds and it's like pretty fun, but yeah, there's no like visual element. It's literally just like get this many points and you're like, oh,
okay. So it's a good single player experience if you're just like wanting to play some solitaire-esque point generation game.
Yeah, I wouldn't really describe the gameplay to solitaire, but like the appearance, perhaps.
The typical deck builder. Honestly, this game looks really fun. If it was free, I'd definitely play it. I don't know. I haven't paid for a game in a long time, other than like Flesh and Blood. So, man, yeah. When's the last time I paid for a game? Oh, I've bought Clanad for the Switch about 2 years ago, but I don't own a Switch, and I still don't. So, yeah. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. But
Very good.
yeah, I would collect things, but I typically don't pay for my games. Still play a lot of the free to play like Apex and TFT. Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay, I think this will wrap it up here then. All right, good night, everyone.
Good night.